Hello, sister girl. It is November 14, 2023. And I completed day 10 today. But I think I'm recapping. Is that a word? Day 8. So this is what I'm thinking about. Because a lot is happening. And I say this for each day, but it's because it's true. Like, a lot is happening. There's too many chapters that are being covered each day. And I love it. I truly, truly love that I'm reading it in chronological order because it's making so much more sense now to me. And again, I've read throughout the Bible and I've studied the Bible, like certain parts. One of my first books that I read and studied was the book of Hosea in the Old Testament. Like, I absolutely love the Old Testament. So I'm glad that I'm, obviously starting with the Old Testament. And so I'm definitely looking forward to the New Testament. But reading it or listening, right? Because I'm listening through the Bible, is just making so much sense. And let me just say this, right? So I love Suits. It's the show on Netflix. Many people have already seen it. Some people are just getting to it. I recently just started watching it. I'm in season 4. Me and Edison watch it. And it's so good. And so as excited as I get about watching Suits, I get excited about reading the Bible, because reading it or listening, again, if I say read, I mean listen, because that's what I've been doing more of, listening, as I'm completing this Bible plan. And as I'm listening to it, it's just like, it just makes sense, because the stories, the timeline of everything is going in order. And so, I'm understanding why this happened, why that person, why that happened, who this person is, who that person is. And I even got myself, I ordered it today. I ordered 2. Oh my gosh, how many more Bibles do I need, Jen? So I ordered 2 Good News Translation Bibles. One was like $5 on Amazon, and it was small. And I'm like, I want to be able to have it in translation, but a printed copy of it, as I'm listening through it in that translation, because that's the version that I'm choosing to listen to the Bible on. And again, as I study the Bible, I use the ESV and the CSB, which is more of word for word, and the GNT is more of a thought for thought. So if you look it up, it'll explain the difference of a word for word translation of a Bible versus thought for thought. And so yeah, so the GNT is a thought for thought to thought. And I got the one that's like $5, and then there was another one that caught my attention that was 20% off, so I got it for $11. And that was, instead, restoring hope. And it talked about it had listed like the subtitle says something about certain like verses that are specifically highlighted as you are healing on this journey and growing spiritually and stuff. So let's just check it out, right? I don't want to knock it till I have it in my hands and I'm going through it. But so I absolutely love it. And I was thinking, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to do a recap each day. And that's something that I wanted to do for me. And of course, if anybody was encouraged by any of these videos, if anybody's even watching them, then awesome, right? But it's just a lot to cover. And it's a lot for me to, first of all, it's a lot that I'm retaining. Then on top of that, having to like share it so that I can remember it and break it down. And I'm mixing things up and I'm like, wait, this is not good. I don't want to do that, because I don't want to misguide myself. I don't want to misguide anyone else who may come across this video. So I'm just thinking of sharing. Like, for example, today I'm going to be covering day 8, right? Although I'm on day 10 and I completed day 10 this morning. I'm going to share the things, or whether it's one thing or a couple things that stood out to me the most of that day. And so, for instance, day 8, I'm covering Genesis 46 to 50 and Exodus 1 through 5. Those were the chapters that day 8 had. Excuse me. And so what's happening right now is Jacob, I wrote some notes as I was, waiting for my time to go to lunch. I wrote, Jacob packed all he had and went, because okay, remember day 7 I was talking about how Joseph finally, I don't think I mentioned it, but Joseph finally tells his brothers, like, I am who I am. I'm Joseph. I'm your brother. I'm the brother that you tried to do harm, but what you meant for evil, God turned it for my good. And so Jacob, when he came, wait, first of all, so Joseph invited Jacob and the family, right, his descendants, to come to Egypt, right? Because remember, Joseph is governing Egypt. And so he says that, but then Jacob, look what he does. So this is what I wrote as I was remembering listening to it. Jacob packed all he had and went to Beersheba, which is a place where Jacob's ancestors, Abraham and Isaac, lived. And they built altars to worship God. And so he was invited to go to Egypt by Joseph. So Jacob was going to go with his entire family. It was about 70 of them, not including the wives and other relatives. But before making this move, he wanted to seek God's guidance and wanted to make sure that this was like God giving him the green light to do so. So Jacob offered sacrifices to God in Beersheba, and he received a vision from God, in which God then confirmed that he would be with him in Egypt and that he was going to make Jacob's descendants into a great nation there. Right? So this vision gave Jacob the confidence and the peace of mind he needed to make sure that, okay, I'm good. It's okay to pack up myself and he had already packed things up, but went to Beersheba like, look, God, I don't want to go any further unless you give me the permission to do so. And I want to make sure that you're the one guiding me. I want to make sure that you're okay with this. And so God gave him a vision, and to reassure him, like, yes, I'm giving you the okay to go travel to Egypt. And then he did. So he goes, and what else happened? After he visits Beersheba, him and his family, they go and set out to go to Egypt. They travel and they take everything, their possessions, including their livestock, and they finally get to Egypt, right? And so once they arrive, Joseph obviously was already in Egypt, and he had risen to an even higher position of power, right? So he went to go meet with his father Jacob in Goshen, which was a land that they ended up staying in. So Jacob and Joseph were united or reunited after many years of separation. And I wrote Pharaoh, which was a ruler of Egypt, was very happy to have Joseph's family in the land, and he pretty much granted them the best land of Goshen, which was like a region in Egypt. So Jacob and his sons settled there, and they prospered, they multiplied, and they became like more of them, right? So during this time in Egypt, Jacob lived for 17 more years, and he blessed his sons and their descendants. So he also prophesied about their future and what would happen to them in the years to come. So he broke it down like, this is what's going to happen to you and your family. This is what's going to happen to you and your family. This is, and then it made me think about my father-in-law, how he prays over, every time he calls us, he's always, letting us know that he's praying for our kids, for his grandchildren. He's praying for us. He prays for all of us, and then I also have my parents praying for us. Like, that's just what they do. And to know that, here is Jacob praying over his family and prophesying over them, right? And Jacob was then coming to that age of, he was already old. He was losing his vision, and he called for Joseph. So he called for Joseph, made a promise. Oh no, he asked Joseph, promise me that when I die, you're not going to bury me here. You're going to bury me in Canaan, which was where Abraham and Sarah was buried at, where Isaac and Rebekah was buried at, and where Jacob had buried Leah. Leah was his first wife, right? And so this was the place where he wanted to be buried at. And so that's what they did. So Joseph and the brothers, I believe, asked Pharaoh for permission to go, and he was like, go ahead and do what you have to do. So Pharaoh granted them permission to go, so they went, and a lot more happened after that, but I'm just giving you what stood out to me the most. And it made me think about how, so they went and buried him. They What else did they do? They were there for a while. Yeah, okay, that's what it was. They mourned him for 70 days. And so there was a way of, in that time, it was a cultural thing where before Jacob died, he asked Joseph to make him a promise, to make a vow to him. And so it was interesting when I heard it, when Jacob said, put your hand under my thigh or between my thigh or something like that. And what that means, because I had to look it up. Okay, over the weekend I did some studying, and I studied a little bit, not too much, but that stood out to me, and that was one of the questions. I was like, why the thigh? And so for right now, it seems like that's weird, right, in modern time. But during that time, it was a cultural thing. It was out of like, it just proved like I can trust you, you know, like you're gonna be loyal to me. And so that was Joseph's way of promising, making a vow to Jacob that I'm gonna bury you in Canaan. I'm not gonna bury you here in Egypt. And so that took place. But then after Joseph died, the brothers were a little bit scared, because they're like, okay, dad died. Is Joseph still gonna take care of us, you know, or are we gonna be fearful of him doing harm to us for what we did, for what we tried to do to him back then? And but he didn't. Joseph told them, like, listen, I'm not gonna hurt you. If anything, he took care of them even more to reassure them that they had nothing to worry about. So yesterday I had mentioned, which is why it's important that you don't bank on what I'm saying. You should go to the word for yourself, because I butchered a few things. I said certain things that were out of order as far as like how it went down. So in Exodus, when I was reading 1 through 5, they talked about a Levite woman, right? Yeah, which was Moses' mom. So during that time, after all of this happened, after Jacob died, Joseph then lasted for a few years. He even grew old to meet his grandchildren, and so he lasted that long. And then after that, he died, right? So, but by then there were so many more Israelites, right? So these descendants were considered Israelites. And so the people of Israel, which were the chosen people of God, they pretty much were more of them than the Egyptians. So the Egyptians felt threatened and were like, we got to put these people to work, because they're gonna, there's not much that's happening, and they keep asking us to let them go, like to let them go back to where they belong. And no, like we need to put them to work. So they do, and they become slaves, and they go through a lot, they suffer a lot, but God hears their cry. And then but anyway, so then the Levite woman, right, the king, one of the rulers, because then Pharaoh died, I believe, so then somebody else became a ruler. So then he said, I want I believe he said, all of the Egyptian women that are giving birth, I think it was, I want you to end the lives of the firstborn sons. And so the Levite woman gave birth to a son, which was Moses, and she waited till he was 3 months. And to protect him, she built like a little basket, placed him in the basket, and then placed him in the Nile River, right? I believe that was the Nile River. But then Miriam, which was Moses' sister, she was looking out for him, and just, I can just imagine her being there like, man, I'm not going to see my brother no more. Like, he's, I don't know. So she kept an eye on him, as I would with my sister, because my sister, she's my everything, right? So I can just imagine how painful it was for Miriam. But she kept an eye on him. But then Pharaoh's daughter, this was another Pharaoh, right? So then Pharaoh's daughter, I believe that's what it was. Pharaoh's daughter, she got close to the river. It just so happened during that time. It was not coincidence, right? God makes all things work together for our good. So she was there. I think there's going to be a part 2. So she was there, saw him. But then Miriam, right, was like, oh, do you want me to bring him to... There's going to be a part 2. BRB.